me what
I'm
he's drinking.
joining for the cause.
For the cause.
Cheers.
Cheers.
When it's bourgeoisie, it's chilled Fireball. You know, it's bougie.
Right?
Nice.
Dude, chilled Fireball is way better than room temperature Fireball.
This is my coffee. You know?
There's a massive difference in like drinkability.
Right. Just enough to get you woke.
Yeah.
Well,
So do you put it in your coffee?
No, I have coffee next to it. I'm kind of double fisting.
Gotcha.
that's the way to go.
Right.
That's the way
I
to
wonder if
go.
that would go well with. I don't know, because it gave me an idea. I kind of want to like put a shot of Fireball in like a pumpkin spice coffee and just see how it comes out.
Ooh,
Yeah, right. Pumpkin spice could work.
Goodness. I don't know. They should make that latte and then sell it at a bar and like up the price.
Yeah, no
Right.
doubt.
You know, get
Give
them
us
on
the
that
cut
pumpkin
for
spice
talking
shit.
about it on the show, or send us some free booze.
Hell yeah.
So we're here to talk about money today.
Right.
Yeah, talk about finances. Mike, you've been talking a lot about the Federal Reserve and our birth certificate notes in the past few weeks. You know, since I've gotten to talk to you, and you brought up a lot of great points on some things that I don't actually have as much information on as you do, and you seem to be really into this point of base because basically, like you have said, like we are all debt slaves. And I'm really interested in this topic and really kind of delving into it.
Well, you know, it is a fascinating topic, and I think that again with the life in the world that we live in when we're talking about money, I mean it's the bane of our existence. You know, I mean we've been taught at a young age to, you know, get that American dream of get out there, get that money, and you know build a life and have a happy home. But what we're seeing is that the money's not as
get there.
Not a lot of people get there, or not enough. And the people that do get there don't want to help other people get there. And when the money becomes a standard of controlling people, then, you know, we've kind of got issues because obviously more people are born every day. So you've got, you know, I mean, it's 2018, obviously there's a lot of people that have had hundreds and hundreds of years of head start to collecting what is called money. And the farther you go back, you know, this exchange of paper receipts, you know, coincides with there being a precious metal equivalent, so that there was gold and there was a standard, so that goods could be treated fairly and equally across the planet in a free enterprise kind of way, or free market, you know, for lack of a better term. But what we're seeing now is that obviously certain, you know, families have been here longer and have been able to, you know, we'll give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt, you know, for conversational topics, but build something, you know. I mean, obviously, banks needed to be created. There needed to be a system for, you know, collecting these things, but it's become egregious. It's become fraudulent. And, I mean, as far as America's Federal Reserve, it's just unconstitutional because they've used the law legally to create basically a fictitious entity, which then they make your parents choose the name of this fictitious entity with you unknowingly and unwittingly entering into this contract. And then throughout your course of life, you're never given the instructions on how to redeem that certificate so that you can be secure in your life to, you know, provide for that, you know, gold standard of living. And it's there for everyone across the planet for all I know and for all intents and purposes. If central banking is, you know, part of a country's, you know, banking system, then they run off a fractional reserve, and the whole thing is just compared to money and debt. It's a cyclical cycle of money and debt, because the more debt that these banks can accumulate, they can trade with governments and other bond, you know, certificate forms and create a fake money supply, you know, out of the loans, which, you know, it's basically bankers who were figuring out, and this is probably going back a few hundred years, you know, figuring out that cashing in the receipts weren't being redeemed timely. So that, in essence, the bankers could double issue multiple receipts, you know, because they were like, well, you know, we've got all this gold, but the guys who gave us the gold, who have the receipts, are only coming back, you know, maybe, you know, they're only coming back once every other 3 months to get their gold. So we can issue twice as many receipts over a 6-month period and still be able to cover all the guys that actually come in and get their gold, but we'll make twice as much. And so it's this whole concept of overextending yourself, but at the same time, figuring out the math behind the redemption process. And so, I mean, there we kind of stand, getting into how the founding fathers, run through this process of constantly battling, a centralized banking process, and then you get into guys like Alexander Hamilton, who created the first central bank, and then Andrew Jackson, who basically killed the central banks. But obviously, as bankers, overextend government power, then now we're in a situation where, obviously everyone knows that most of these politicians, they're controlled by big bankers, and, obviously, again, we're at the oil, we're at the, I mean, who even knows really where the gold is or how much there is, but we're running around chasing to still get it, that's for sure.
There's a rumor that that Fort Knox no longer actually has any gold in it. A huge rumor.
Yeah.
And that it actually is it's stockpiles of opiates in case war breaks out. It's serious. I'm serious. There's supposedly a stockpile of opiates in case like World War III breaks out. They'll have enough for military use.
Wow.
And, blows my mind. You know what I mean? So you got all these soldiers guarding what they would want to be gold, but it's quite possibly just opium.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess maybe we should put that on the map, or a pit stop, as far as if there is an apocalyptic moment, we know where to stop on the way to wherever we're going.
We'll know where the drugs are. At least we'll know where the drugs are. You know what I mean? Become drug barons because of Fort Knox.
Right.
In the gigantic apocalyptic wasteland,
It's too funny.
Oh man, it's hilarious.
I mean, I guess it's part of the big triangle, big pharma, gas and oil, and maybe what's the third one? Who knows? But it's, I guess, a work in progress for these guys. So.
Yeah. Pharmaceuticals, gas and oil, and then banking itself. I think that's the three major lobby groups, the biggest ones.
Yeah, right. Pretty soon, I guess we got to throw electricity in there, because if I guess Tesla wasn't the name of a car company, it would be what would be the electrical company, right? Because you'd have just free zero-point energy by now. I mean,
yeah. That was the goal. You know what I mean? That was the goal.
Right. Yeah, but that's definitely one area I want to get into, is just the evolution of the patent office. Because obviously we know the names Alexander Graham Bell and Edison and Ford and all of these mainstream people, that are basically what is the American history, aren't always the people that you think they are. And then you kind of do a little digging, and you're finding out, people who were really on the map, but have actually been subsidized for lack of mainstream media purposes. But again, there's so many lines of train of thought that comes off of this time period in connection with how the money became the tool that it is, and how you see, and again, there's the secret meeting at Jekyll Island. I'll find the date. It's on one of my pieces of paper, but as we shift in and out. But it's the secret meeting at Jekyll Island, where basically the bankers just coordinated with all of the politicians that they knew they could buy out, and so they basically took them all there in the secret meeting, and they basically contrived and take a 3-year plan on when they met, and this whole evolution of when this next election was that Woodrow Wilson comes into power.
Yeah.
And so they signed this document basically in the dark of the night. It was December 23rd, 1913.
Yep.
So I'd have to even check. I'd have to check my. I don't even know.
I know when it was at that time.
It was Thanksgiving, wasn't it? I thought it was like it was right before Thanksgiving. I know it was right before Thanksgiving because basically everybody was gone.
Yeah, everyone was gone. Right. Yeah, it was that session.
Yeah.
Okay, so then.
Then Woodrow Wilson gets elected, and then he is the president who authorizes the enactment of the Federal Reserve Act.
Yeah.
And then that's the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank, and that's actually, it's funny because the first year
when
that
World War I kicked off.
Going into the 1920s, yeah.
Well, yeah, because World War I was 14 to 18. So like
14 to 18.
So it was like a big fell swoop, you know.
And that's funny because, and again, like I said, there's so many trains of thought that comes off of this because the financiers of World War I were obviously the lovely, Rothschild family, of course, and
right.
Getting into the Federal Reserve backers, you got guys on our side like, Jacob Schiff, the Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, the Warburgs, and the Rockefellers.
Yeah.
And they're all tied to the Rothschilds. So I mean, the central banking, I kind of did a quick little research, and it literally starts, with the early 1600s. Just the concept of just this, not necessarily fractional reserve at that point, but obviously the haves, the King Williams were obviously the haves, and they're figuring out a way to pass on whatever their costs are in the form of an annual percentage rate. You know what I mean? Now we get thrown all these terms, and it's like, it goes all the way through. Bank of England starts in 1694, and this whole private bank versus for-profit banks. So now the bankers are actually creating profits off of the banks, and then you run into like 1780s, 81s, First Bank of North America, and all this other good stuff. But just kind of, it's just amazing to see that for 400 years, and it's probably well before then. That's obviously just kind of when I took up to try to create some sort of paradigm as far as that macro look, as far as just a consolidation of almost the epiphany of the idea coming from the banker side of it. And, again, trying to give a little bit of compassion for these people on, if your grandfather gave you a bank, not only did he give you a bank, he gave your four brothers a bank, and you and your four brothers had a network of banks from London to Brussels to Amsterdam to, Europe, and basically we're told to, consolidate, you're going to kind of, especially if you want to live in the family, because there's a couple of Rothschilds who have kind of deferred and have ended up, we'll say, passing away at a early age. So, yeah.
They meant untimely ends. They meant very
untimely
ends.
Right.
Committed suicide with 2 bullets to the back of their own head.
Yeah, right.
On that note, I think I'm going to have a shot of Fireball.
All right, well, cheers to life.
It's a rough life out there, man, because, like, you're held to such a high standard when you're in that kind of a family. Like, you were born into something you might not have been ready for. You might not ever, it can't be normal. There's no way it's fucking normal,
And at what point do you, what if you do have a good peace of mind? And when do you get to open your mouth? You're like, never. Mm-hmm, yeah.
Never.
Did you hear what happened to Johnny? No.
No. Who's Johnny? Oh, he died before you were
Johnny.
born. He was our other kid.
But it's funny because I think it was maybe, I know it was after the election, maybe within the last year or so. Actually, probably was right around December of 17 when the executive order went out. But the Rothschilds had sold a property that had been in their family for almost 138 years.
Wow.
And there's not a whole lot of things that those guys would sell that have been in their family for a long time, but that has connections to the whole child trafficking issues as well.
Oh, the property had the sex trafficking Pizzagate?
It's kind of connected to that. I don't have any, obviously any direct evidence of that, but that's kind of the speculation as to why they had sold that property. And then there's, a lot of the, I don't know if you've heard the stories or, movies or fables and tales about the human hunting.
Human hunting, that's a big one.
Like a week ago about it.
Yeah, no doubt. And I've been listening to a lot of, what you guys have been putting up, and and that's kind of what I love about, what you guys are doing, is that it's information that, it's off the cuff, and I got a bunch of notes here, but I mean, I can give dates, and the information, we're not lawyers, we're not professionals, we're not here for legal, you know what I mean? We're not here for legal advice, we're here for the networking part. So it's like, you know what, I'm going to go, and I'll take a couple of notes, and then I'll go out there and I'll connect a little bit of the dots, and that guy Jimmy Seville is very connected to the dots, you know what I mean? Like, and it's, and that's why I think it's crazy, because it's all tied to the money. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the Nexium cult people who are all getting arrested, like the Bronfman lady, these people are all connected, and at some point they've probably all been blackmailed. So I mean, again, this whole calm before the storm moment, hopefully, at least as far as what we're thinking, can be a domino effect at some point, because they all just got to go down. And how that happens, who knows? How do we take down the Federal Reserve? And how do we take down the Federal Reserve and get it to a point where it can become nationalized so that we can build off of the Federal Reserve? You know what I mean? Because no matter what Trump's done, whether he's done in 2 years, whether he's done in 4 years, there's going to be something after the fact. And if we're not ready to function in that kind of manner, then back to square one we go. And I don't want to, it's not about Democrat or Republican anymore. It can't be. I mean, obviously we look like a bunch of kids, in a bad fight. Like, no, mommy, Johnny threw a rock to me, and it's like, dude, we got to get together and start figuring this shit out so that we can build for the future instead of totally living in the past, because it's not getting us very far. As far as goods and services and health of the planet, health of our people. I mean, how do we move that forward? But tell a story that there's been some corruption in our past. There's been some people who haven't done some good things. How do we expose that? And
Nobody
punish
cares.
them? Nobody cares. You know what I mean? And how do we?
I mean, and the people that do are all considered crazy conspiracy theorists.
Right.
And
There's a lot of us, but none of us are really like the majority by any stretch of the means. So it's like, if you don't hit that 2% of the population, you can't even start the wave of change. And we're what, at 7 and change billion people? What's 2% of that? Like,
Right.
I don't pull out a calculator. It's a lot of fucking people.
Right. And I mean, I think that's why I have such a passion for, at least the Federal Reserve issue with the money issue, is because it is so fraudulent, but at the same time, we have to show a parallel on the reality that we live. I mean, it is a reality. How many, like you said, there's 7 billion people on the planet, and if you ask them what is 5 things that you need, one of them's going to be money. I mean,
Right.
you know what I mean? I need to breathe. I need some water, and if I need to fuck a little bit. Sorry for my French, but yeah, I mean,
You can say whatever the hell you want on this. This
you know what
isn't,
I
this
mean?
isn't
Like,
audited by the FCC. You can say fuck, shit, piss, ass. It doesn't
there you
matter.
go, right? Well, if you it's going to be one of your top 5s, but sooner or later, money's on there, and
It's gotta be.
and you can probably ask, money's soulless, it has no heart, and
The fucking thing is sold too for more money. That's the sicker part. It's like,
oh yeah,
I don't go sell potatoes at a potato stand for more potatoes.
right,
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, if you look back at it like a real goods and services thing,
mm-hmm. Well,
you don't
and
get paid in your own work. You get paid in this fucking piece of paper. Like, really? I mean, I guess I guess the system would work if there was a standard income that everybody was paid to just like, bam, housing, food, shelter, all that shit, like, covered.
right.
And then the economy. Like, that would be a good happy medium, but this is just straight up enslavement. It is. I mean, you can.
Yeah, and it's
It
funny
just doesn't
because-
have it, and the walls are invisible. Everybody goes to their jobs to pay their debt.
Yeah, and the debt, the bankers in the system. I pulled up. There's a book that people can research called Modern Money Mechanics.
Yeah.
It was a book that these guys passed, or wrote. And it's an American document, and as far as the government is concerned, and it, just breaks down to them that, their objectives and motives is, to protect themselves and make a profit. They are a for-profit corporation, just like the United States is. That we are no longer an eye into the rest of the, patriots of the country, whether you're deaf, dumb, and blind, or you're as lit up as the Christ consciousness, for all that matter. That we're employees. We're not citizens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This country.
Explain how that works, Mike, because
Well, I mean,
you were saying
basically-
something off air the other day about that.
Well, I mean, it's a system that, and there's a bunch of FDR. I think he was the president that rolled out the New Deal and the whole Social Security concept. When that was rolled out, it was sold as an account. It wasn't because and now you hear it kind of thrown around as like a health savings account. You know what I mean? That's kind of a term that I would it just equate it to terminology. But FDR is, we're going to have this Security Administration, and you're going to have a Social Security account. you're going to have from the day that you're born that's going to protect you. And as you work, that we're going to give you this number, and it's going to be branded to you, and you're going to pay a little bit of your paycheck, of your hard-earned money into this account, so that when you retire, the government will be there to protect you in your Social Security account. You know what I mean? Like, that's how that's. And again, and this is a great area of opportunity where if I'm wrong, or obviously I'm being inflated, but hey, leave it in the comments and I'll keep researching it.
It's just a pyramid.
That right, but that's how it was sold, and all three of us, everyone's got one of these little blue cards. It looks a little fancy, has a stamp on there, your little Social Security.
Dude, I've had mine since I was like 12, bro. Like, it's survived ages, man. I have like one of my originals.
Totally, I'm looking at mine right now, and I remember when it was, when my mom was like, "Dude, you got to go do that. You got to go get that card. That's
you
the
have
one
to.
You got to have." I mean, I had it, like you said, 12. I mean, I had it before I had a driver's license. And it's funny because I just pulled it up, and you can go to dictionary.law.com, but I pulled up the legal term, and it's called a straw man. And it's about 3 sentences long, but I want to read it because this is a legal term, and it's going to blow your mind. So a straw man is a noun. A person to whom title to property or a business interest is transferred for the sole purpose of concealing the true owner and or the business machinations of the parties. Thus, the straw man has no real interest or participation, but is merely a passive stand-in for a real participant who secretly controls activities. Sometimes a straw man is involved when the actual owner is not permitted to act, such as a person with a criminal record or holding a liquor license. And then there's also a technical, a teaching term or like school term that actually gives cover to the concept of a straw man, because you're taught in argumentative or argumentation and debate or whatever those classes are, that the straw man is a fallacy. You know what I mean? So it's already built into the system that when you hear the concept of a straw man, you're like, oh, that's just a fake term for this and this and that. But this is a legal definition of that the government has created a fictitious entity in your government name that your mother and father signed to that birth certificate when you were born. And that birth certificate is printed on bond paper, which makes it a bond. It is a secured bond traded for, and the government trades on all bonds. You can go to the stock exchange, you can go to, whatever trading platform you want to get into stocks. Right, treasury bonds, debt bonds. I mean, back in the day, there was cotton, there were cotton bonds, mortgage bonds. So there's birth certificate bonds. And again, where's that concept brought up in any of our teaching? And as far as investing goes, you get to invest in your birth certificate bonds? I don't think so. I mean, they don't bring that to trading. But that birth certificate is created, and it's been incorporatized, because then you go into 1913. That's when the U.S. government files second bankruptcy. The Bankers of London come in, assume the debt, and then you get the Gold Confiscation Act. I didn't write down the exact date on that one, but literally they pass a federal law, and the government comes and knocks on your door and says, "Hey, we need your gold," and you're not permitted to ask, "Well, why?" You already know that the government just screwed us because we're dead broke and we can't pay our bills. So the only thing that they have left is the labor. So you would basically been incorporatized through this Social Security birth certificate process, and it all ties to admiralty and merchant law. So obviously, back during those times, there wasn't all these millions and billions of cars running around. So their mode of transportation was boats. And kings and queens who owned these boats took out insurance policies on these boats for the goods that were on the boat. You had a boat full of gold, like you're saying, who was out of luck? Well, whoever owned the gold and whoever owned the boat, you know what I mean? So those were obviously worth the 1% of their time. So they're, trying to, secure their investments as well. But the admiralty law and merchant law that has the jurisdiction of the sea governs your birth certificate. And then, like I said, unless you're given the opportunity to redeem that birth certificate through the legal process, and that process in and of itself we could go into would take us fucking hours, because there really is no knowledge to that. But if you don't redeem that process, you are considered dead at sea. And then the government gets to assume the rulings of that straw man that is governed with your Social Security number and your identity. And so these accounts have millions and billions of dollars on them. I mean, and it's all governed by the QSIP number on the back, or there's other really, there's different speculations on what exactly that number is. But as far as the research that I've done, I found and used an account connected through, well, I guess I should cover my ass legally, but either way, I mean, it's not it wasn't a crime, it wasn't a fraud, because even though the Federal Reserve denies that these accounts are there, it's kind of like if I bounced a check at my bank, you know what I mean? So when you go to your bank and you use the ACH payment process, you know, okay, oh, Wells Fargo, I want to pay T-Mobile, here's my account, here's my dump, submit, and then you get a confirmation number. Great. Well, guess what works? If you can find your Federal Reserve bank, you know, there's 12 Federal Reserve branches in the United States. There's plenty of open source research on YouTube on how to, you know, use your Social Security card to find out which bank your account is located. And if you research the ACH payment processing system enough, you will learn how to use that account, and you can get confirmation that the account works. But what I would suggest that people, you know, choose that route.
So, like, we have an account of money that we can access that we don't really know about. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would only substitute the word money with, you have an account that has accrued debt based on your Social Security number. Where the money comes in is the bankers who trade on the certificate bond. So there's almost a separate account connected to the actual account that the strong man is, that you don't have access to. But since we signed these documents with our name on anything, again, with an APR, so if you take out a car loan, a bank loan, this is where, you know, anything that's attached to your strong man's identity that we're signing for, because we live in California or the United States where statutory law has jurisdiction over us. If you get pulled over, you got to fucking sign for the ticket. You know, if you card, if you want to use it at the bank, you got to sign your name for the check. Like, go to a dealership, you want to buy a car, you got to sign your name. Do we know that we're understanding the jurisdiction instead of overstanding that we have full jurisdiction, because we are the living souls? And there is a body of law that is called the Uniform Commercial Law that I think that over the next 15 or 20 years is really going to come to the surface as far as it's called the Uniform Commercial Code. So this is a body of law that governs intercontinental law, because obviously America has a different set of laws than Canada than every other country in the world. So there has to be a bridge to, you know, get done across the world. And so this Uniform Commercial Code covers that, because it works in coincidentally with admiralty law, merchant law, and common law, which is basically the law of the land, natural law, that oversides and gives jurisdiction to us as the living, breathing souls that literally are the straw man but don't know it and entered into a contract unwittingly and unknowingly, which is the underlying basis that makes the Federal Reserve System unconstitutional and fraudulent, because it's committing identity theft. You know, and so if you had access to these accounts, which are basically debt accounts, then you can access any outstanding debt that your straw man has accrued and cancel that debt or discharge that debt. It's not necessarily an account of money. And, you know, this is what happened last year when two people that were in our kind of truth-seeking circle had basically accessed that account. And I urge people to research that. It's Heather Tucci-Giraffe and Randall Bean. And, you know, there's a bunch of open source information about these guys that obviously got convicted. They obviously went to jail. And, you know, because they accessed the cash component of that. Like this guy, Randall Bean, basically used these account numbers to buy CDs off of Barclays, and then took the penalty, cashed in the money to a USA bank account that he had already. He was kind of an executive at, or not necessarily, I don't want to call him an executive, but he was more than just an employee. So he had access to making money transfer.
Account manager. He was like an account manager.
Yeah, sure, something like that. So he transfers the money to his own bank account and walks into a RV place and buys a $500,000 RV with cash.
Oh, that was dumb.
So, right, like that was dumb. So obviously, you know, you're going to get in trouble for that shit. And a lot of people, you know, were kind of like left in the wind on, you know, oh my God, they got convicted. And it's like, if you walk into a courtroom, and this lady, Heather Tucci-Giraffe, you know, she's very intuitive and very knowledgeable about the Uniform Commercial Code. So she went into this courtroom not giving away that jurisdiction. And at the end of the day, the judge has no choice but to, you know, make her at least play by his rules, because you're in his court, you know. So there is no introduction of a lot of the strongman information as far as building that separation of two entities, but then being conflated and you never really knowing that one is the other, or that you're able to discharge some of your debt, you know, legally. And you can look at the there's a UCC Financing 1 statement, or the redemption process of your birth certificate, and it's not easy to find. It's not a cheap process, but you can become a secured party creditor and redeem your birth certificate. But again, there's not enough people that are doing it, and it's so hard that it's with like any other legal document. If you fuck it up, you're gonna be in trouble. You know what I mean?
Is this why so many high-profile crimes happen with state senators, with national senators or representatives of representative government? Is this how they wind up out of not getting in basically almost any trouble when it comes to some of the larger crimes they commit in the financial sector?
Well, I think that I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know why. I mean, the biggest reason why I think why, and I study a lot of philosophy. That's where I went to school at. There's a guy named John Locke who does a lot on government, who basically kind of composes this whole implied consent normative that people give a government. We give the government an implied consent, almost a wink, wink, nod, nod, that the government has our best interest.
Right.
And again, when you have a government of a couple 100,000 people or a couple million people, it's easy for that wink, wink, nod, nod to be on the same page, where you have national security, you have low taxes, you're able to buy land, and you can be a sovereign citizen.
Right.
But again, we don't operate in that world anymore. We're operating in a for-profit. We work at the franchise of California, and that franchise is a for-profit corporation, and they answer to the United States of America. And in Washington D.C., the 10-mile radius of Washington D.C. is off limits. It has no jurisdiction. It is not bound by any law. And those senators and those officials that work in that 10-mile radius, basically are untouchable. And then, you can get into the more recently, I think it's 1979, Jimmy Carter gets into and passes the Senior Executive Service, in which case, FBI and CIA and NSA agents who hit a G15 level can, I guess, for, again, lack of knowledge and for lack of a better term, be recruited to gain access into a G16, 17, 18 level. And one of those security blankets is that you can't be fired. So, you're seeing stuff
tenure.
now like Project Veritas. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You have tenure.
Yeah, you have tenure.
You have tenure.
And now you're seeing, even over the last month, if you're watching the Project Veritas stuff, this guy is sending in people, and they're infiltrating these, democratic, institutions. As far as they work for the federal government, but they're doing Democratic Socialist of America work on the clock, and they're being exposed, and they're literally on camera saying, "Well, I can't be fired." And I'm not saying that all of those people are in the Senior Executive Service,
right?
But, they're people who have a very comfortable lifestyle, and you're seeing them exposed. Guys like Peter Strzok, John Brennan and Clapper, and just some of these people who are just overtly Brennan he voted for a communist president and still got into the CIA. How does that happen? How do you openly come out for a communist presidential candidate, vote for him, and then still get into the CIA? I don't understand some of that stuff.
They would have tried to hang him in the 50s.
You know what I mean? and that's one thing that James had even brought up World War I at one point, and World War II. Russia was our ally. We were not at war with Russia, and now, as far as the history book is concerned, they're probably just, the walking demons of the planet. And it's like,
right.
And we gotta, I don't know. As far as, if we could keep away from the war and get some, decent money, I think we'd kind of be able to start loving each other a little bit more. But, that's one thing about being a conspiracy theorist, I guess, is trying to use those historical dates that have been ingrained to our mind, like who discovered America? Oh yeah, Christopher Columbus. All this other
bullshit.
Oh, right, you know what
Not
I mean?
even
But
close.
use those, not even close, right?
Not even
But
close.
and then to hear stuff that Google's coming out, or Microsoft, or whoever builds those Chromebooks, and now they're infiltrating our elementary schools with Chromebooks and digital learning coming from one source. They're not learning from books,
Right.
And I don't want to say that's totally the case. I'm sure they still have books, but that's standard, and even then you should be checking on who wrote your kids' book now. So
Right.
I guess that goes with all social media, and that's probably one of the other hurdles that we have, is that social media and mainstream media, they're not they're not helping the cause of the people. And maybe that's, part of the reason, like we were talking about cause, or, part of the reason where we're at is that we haven't been given the tools to want to participate civically. Like you were saying, nobody cares. I'd rather go watch football a day on Sunday, or go to the beach, or who would want to go to a PTA meeting, or who wants to go vote on, do we really need 10-cent bags at the fucking grocery store? You know what I mean? Like, stupid shit that we have in California. Like, who the fuck voted to pass a law that we had to pay 10 cents for a fucking bag at the grocery store? Like, are you out of your mind?
That's crazy.
But hey, it's crazy. I mean, and now we're about to, in November, there's the bill on there that passed a $52 billion gas tax. And there's politicians that are like, yeah, over 10 years.
They're going to raise the gas prices again, dude.
25 cents.
And the registrations.
Yeah,
bro, that's insane.
It's absolutely unbelievable. And I was reading a post, too, that they're trying to build into that law a restriction on the number of miles you can drive your car per year.
What the fuck? Dude, I remember when I moved down there the first time, literally, like, I was paying, like, goddamn near $5 a gallon for unleaded. I was like, how the fuck do people survive out here? Like,
yeah. I mean, and even then, I got a couple of good places that are right at $3.15, but...
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's, you work as an Uber driver, don't you?
Yeah.
That
about 1,000 miles a week, mate.
That kills you.
Uh-huh.
That's disgusting.
So I'm definitely voting no on Prop 6, that's for sure.
I had just read today they're also considering a 25-cent road usage tax to gasoline nationally.
Oh my God.
Yeah, nationally.
And as far as I know, the freeway systems, was a military expenditure, designed for, being able to connect, so I mean, there shouldn't be toll roads, man. There should be government spending for fucking building freeways and roads and shit. So again, I mean,
my dad had always told me that the way they got the interstate system built is because it's in the Constitution that we have to have a steady and timely postal system. And so the postal system is what they, I mean, I guarantee it has something to do with the military too, because we couldn't just like not get troops across the country. But since we had to have the postal system, because the way it was written, they could use it as a way to say, well, we can't get anything, we've just grown too big. We got to we got to make it to where people can get their mail.
Right.
That's way before phones. You know what I mean? It's before phones.
Yeah. Well, that's one date in particular. I think it's February 21st, 1871. It's the District of Columbia Organic Act. And so they use a couple of loopholes, and I'm still reading Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of this particular act, but that's where it gets into allowing the corporation of the United States to duplicate or allowing that duplicate entity name, so that the corporation can use that for the term is commercial enterprise for profit. And so again, I'm kind of not finalizing all those terms, but in this Section 1, Clause 8 is gives the establishment of post office and post roads.
So they change their sovereignty to a corporate entity.
Yeah.
Which makes us not a country.
Correct, absolutely. And any bank that has central banking or fractional reserve is a for-profit corporation. That's exactly it. And so, I mean, I did a search once, so you can just search in how many banks do the Rothschilds own, and literally the list is, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of banks. Like,
wow.
It's ludicrous, I mean, and again, there's one article I think I read yesterday where because we throw around the 1% a lot, but I think what again is relevant now is that the 1% is well over 700 million people, right? I mean, if we got 7 billion, what's one?
Well,
fucking a lot of is that right? Is that right math or math?
No, it's what would it be? I guess it's 7 million.
Is it 7 million? Okay, so that
for the 1%, right?
Technically, if we
billion?
go on the global,
no, it's
1%?
70 million. Shit, I'm fucking stupid. Yeah, it's 70 million.
Okay. Yeah. No, I thought I was up too, but it was up by 0. But 70 still, that's 70 million people that are out there. Now the world GDP just hit 100 trillion.
Wow.
And, and that is more than the world debt. So literally, the bankers own not only the entire world, they own the entire world and all of the debt combined.
And all of its debt.
And the debt is fraudulent. Hey, cat alone. Shut up. That's my wonderful dog.
Don't worry, we'll cut it out.
Hey,
Which dog is it?
Charlie. Oh yeah, I still have my mom's dog, Charlie. Yeah.
How's where's Sally at?
Sally's with Eric. Yeah, they still have her up on Oceanside.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
she's kicking ass. Yeah, she loves it. They got 4 kids now, so she gets all that attention that you were giving her, right? The little butt.
Yeah, dude. I got right before I left, man. I put on some pounds on Sally.
She loves it, man. She's a pounder, so she loves it.
Fucking cool dogs, man.
Right? Yeah, dude. They kept me sane in some moments.
Dude, fur friends are
Sure.
everything. That's for real. Fur
Right.
friends kick ass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, this is some fucking heavy shit, dude, for real. Like,
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. You know, like
70 fucking million people have, what is it, like 99.8% of the wealth or some shit?
All the
Like,
money.
Yeah.
something stupid.
yeah,
It's
and
like
that's where I mean, you just give some of it away. You could give it away as a tax deduction for all I care, right? I mean,
Right? I mean, the thing is, like, we're not, like, us as American dudes, like, you know, we're all not, like, doing great, but, like, in comparison to some places, like, we haven't fucking made. And that's the scary
We do.
part, is those people outnumber us, like, 10, 20-fold.
right. And again, that's kind of where I'm coming from as far as we do have the freedom of speech, at least for the moment, as far as that goes. But
Maybe.
it's just kind of right, but
For a
I
week
guess
or
that's
two.
I guess that's the precipice of doing things, right? Doing things like this and trying to raise awareness and not putting I mean, I guess at some point you have to put a Republican Democratic, look on it because that's the system. But I think there it's to stretch the system for, opening up to a third party, a legitimate third party, and a fourth party, and a fifth party, and being able to be more democratic in our process, because I think that the Democrats that make up the Democratic Party aren't fulfilling what we think being democratic is. I don't even know if that made sense.
Oh no, it totally
Kind
makes
of.
sense. When I went out to California,
You know what I mean?
I got to realize like the things that because I'm from the Midwest, and the things that,
Mhm.
I'm pretty much I'm kind of in the middle when it comes to everything. I'm kind of libertarian, but I'm not. I would never label myself as such, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Um,
Right.
never label myself as such, because some of those people are just fucking weirdos. I'm just saying. But like, you realize there's some people that are so far left that they wouldn't be able to fucking see like a compromise if it snuck up behind them. And there's people that are on the right that are so far right that like that they're just ridiculous. You know what I mean, on both sides. And then
Yeah.
you what you really want is the people that are kind of in the middle, and they can kind of get along on a few things and kind of work things out for the betterment of everyone's constituents.
Right.
But we're
Yeah.
we're no longer getting that. We're getting the fucking
No.
really far left, really far right people, and neither one of them make any sense to me.
Well, I mean, it's funny because I think a lot of people with that scratching head moment as far as why is it like that?
Right.
I can kind of we've had a common thread of and not without scapegoating these people, but
Yeah.
they finance every side of every war,
Right.
basically that we can think of. You know what I mean? Like, and not only do they finance every side of the war because war is money to them. That is their profit machine. That is the machine that gives the system power, because
Right.
it creates the fear and the negativity that keeps you on the path to getting the soulless money. You know what I mean? So if they can
Yeah.
create this soulless, system that's run off of negativity and a necessity to stay within the norm, then you're subject to that slavery system that has no color lines, has no age lines. You know what I mean? You got 65-year-old people working at Walmart, and you
Yeah.
got 12-year-old kids out there throwing papers on the front porch. I mean, and again, whether you're those Republican, there's obviously flaws with the Republican side of the party too, but as far as what system I grew up in and being democratic and trying to give everyone a fair shot, doesn't mean that this giant democratic government should be making all of those choices for you from the time that you were born to the time you're dead. They should be empowering you to give you opportunity to go search for your own path. And and whether or not that's the case, we can build all kinds of stories for people who are fulfilling that, but it's not the same case for everyone. You have Mark Zuckerbergs who are getting handpicked to do something that he does. From my research, he's not a very good coder. He could not have created Facebook from the research that I've done. Right, and again, I'm not trying to badmouth the guy, but I mean, for a guy that went from where he was to a man that literally could give everyone on the planet $1 million, and not just him. That obviously goes for the Rothschilds and even the Gateses and all of these people as well. And obviously, I'm not for a concept of just giving everyone $1 million. Don't get me wrong, but as far as creating or curing a lot of the problems that we have, I mean, there's no reason why these people couldn't do it, especially with the way that the tax system is run. I mean, if there's over 180 different trusts on this planet. You know what I mean? And systems and foundations and nonprofit organizations, and we think that we're giving to these institutions when literally they are fronts for politicians and rich people to launder money in a legal way. You know what I mean? And like, for example, there's the World Trust, 180 royal trusts, various family trusts, like the Bronfmans, Warburgs, Morgans, 250 plus corporate trusts. And then you get into prosperity program trusts. Those are, again, these ones that hold a lot of these programs that countries over hundreds and hundreds of years have signed treaties. And a lot of treaties are connected to those bonds, so that when these bonds hit a maturation, the planet is subsidized with liquidity. You know what I mean? But since we've connected to this Federal Reserve System, this fractional reserve system of being able to double and triple profits at the expense of minimalizing bank deposits to cover those loans, now we're in the system of bank runs. And so, like in 2008, you know what I mean? We have this circular exposing of the Federal Reserve as fraudulent. They can't even keep themselves up. All of these banks start to go done. And then there's this, all of a sudden, there's this glorious deal where the United States government says, oh, we'll come in and we'll bail you out. All of the while, all the government is doing is giving the Federal Reserve more treasury bonds so that the Federal Reserve can just conflate the two, create a giant money supply, and then give the public back more and more fake dollar bills. Like unbelievable. Like, and that's the point where that implied and unimplied consent we have to start exposing and utilizing, in the sense of, you know what, we no longer give you guys the implied consent of running our money system. It has to go back to the U.S. Treasury. It has to be nationalized, so that even if it was a for-profit corporation, then every citizen within this incorporated United States should be a shareholder in this for-profit corporation and should be cleared of all of their debt legally using their strawman identity. And that doesn't seem so far off execution if we could set it up in a legal way and expose it in a way that, just the same way that these bankers coordinated it, we can unwind it. We just got to start, making civility or being a part of a civic duty more communal, to connect with your neighbors, to go to some of these meetings, to, do away with fraudulent law. Because, again, should there be a fund for gas tax and road tax? Yeah, maybe. But it's the distribution of those goods and services and the connection of major corporations with government contracts that, look at Haiti. I mean, look at what we could talk about Haiti and what the Clintons did with the major construction companies that are all connected to Bill Clinton and Frank Justra and all these guys. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. And so, I mean, a lot of that stuff has to be exposed.
He made $100 million in speaking fees in like 5 years.
Yeah, and and then you can directly trace the donations that coincide with the Clinton foundations. And I don't know if you guys have heard of Charles Ortel. If you haven't heard of him,
it sounds really familiar. I just watched I just did a bunch of research on the Clinton Foundation in Haiti.
Yeah, he's basically, I would call him definitely an expert. If you're looking for exposure of Clinton Foundation fraud, he is the guy to watch. He's got they've done a bunch of hours on crowdsourced the truth, so they've got, I think, well over 100 hours of footage.
Wow. It's a lot of I'm pretty sure I watched some of his videos the other day. I was doing a little bit of research in the Clinton, because it's just such a deep hole, you know what I mean? It's a huge, the whole goal was to make her president, just to and there's no telling what all she did, they weren't able to pay off on, you know what I'm saying? things that would have happened just crazy if they would have made it to the presidency.
Oh, dude, could you imagine if she was the president? I mean, I guarantee you we'd be at war with either Russia, China, or North Korea.
Or
I mean,
all
not
three.
that those things may or may not happen, but or all three,
Or
right?
all three.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like she's like she's a chick that's like, yeah, you know, you read the movie or you read the book Pimp, right? And she's like that chick that's like been through way too much shit in order to not be crazy. And she's absolutely fucking bonkers. She's just done too much crazy shit, and it's just made her crazier.
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, we could do a whole other topic on religion, but I'm sure the religion that she practices, you know, again, according to open source information, isn't what is to the norm. So I mean, that's a whole other, you know, again, but again, she's
Maria
been handpicked and groomed. I mean, and it's not a matter of belief, and that's one thing that, you know, when I'm trying to, you know, again, just to use the process of becoming awoke, because at one point I was asleep and somebody, you know, dripped on me until I was awoke. So I mean, there's a process of when you're talking to people that are open, A, to conspiracy theorists, you know, or B, who are just totally closed off, that, you know, even in the concept of a conspiracy theorist, I mean, the CIA coined the term.
Yes.
They made it up, and people were starting to find out about Roswell and some of those incidences and other secret government programs, because obviously during the 40s and 50s and after World War I and II, there was a lot of, you know, quote unquote testing that was going on that, you know, they didn't want people to know about. So it was easy to pump the Mockingbird media, and if people, you know, who do listen don't know about Operation Mockingbird and MK Ultra, those are definitely two very verifiable and open source, you know, Vault 7 and FBI website information that you can find that they were, I mean, it's not a matter of belief. You know, you can not believe it all you want, but at least, you know, it's kind of like, you know, sometimes, well, I don't want to give Trump any credit really, but, you know, here and there. But, well, I mean, if you, whether you agree with him or disagree with him, some of his speeches are okay and some of what he says is totally bullshit. But if you know, we have to get in a sense of listening to people that we don't like. You know what I mean? Because sometimes they're right. You know, it's like the whole Alex Jones thing. Like, I don't totally agree with everything he says, but I close my eyes and I kind of cringe, but I listen to the words and I'm like, holy shit, when I go do research, some of what he says is fucking right. You know, and the same for other people that, you know, even Don Lemon, you know, like I totally cringe when I listen to Don Lemon for 5 minutes, but I'm like, no, I gotta do it. I gotta listen to some propaganda. I gotta be unconditioned for a minute and see if I can see it. You know, and then you listen to him and you're like, oh my God, you don't want to cringe, but you're like, fuck, all right, I gotta, you know, and it builds a bridge to listening to people who I fucking love NPR and Don, you know, and CNN, and they're like, dude, take a step back and just take a different look at it, because that's the only way forward. If we keep doing this whole, like, no, your site sucks, or your site sucks, or you're full of shit, like I'm full of shit. Like, you don't even know, like, even with all of the research that we're doing, like, it's a drop in the bucket. Like, these people have been operating for well over 1,000 years to compartmentalize us, and, you know, we're just even seeing a open door for 2 years. Because again, it's not about Trump, it's about the movement of people realizing the status quo, if continued for the next 50 years, isn't very bright at all. This planet cannot keep doing what it's doing for the next 50 years.
Right.
Like, it's going to get very dire very fast, because that percentage of people who do have all of the assets are learning better and better every day. And now that they're the ones who are basically teaching the artificial intelligence platforms that are going to govern our lives through the automation process, you know, if we don't learn to utilize, you know, our voice for that, then, you know, definitely look up China, the Dragonfly Protocol, and Skynet, because China does have a company called Skynet. And by the year 2024, they will have 200 million operating CCTVs in their country, and will be doing facial recognition on the second. Every word search that a China person does will be connected to your phone number.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Google's already set up one of their, just moved a corporate base to China, and now they're trying to manipulate some of their laws so that they can get a corporation on Chinese land. And so there's going to be, you know, they're going to obviously try to, well, they're not trying, they're just doing it. They'll worry about the slap on the wrist later.
Yeah.
But, you know,
So you're talking about Trump earlier. So here's something interesting. So King John II of England, All right. Every president we've ever had has been directly related
To the Queen of England.
King John
King,
II.
yeah.
King John II.
King John II.
The man that wrote the Magna Carta.
And that's the Esquire system, right? Or they're all Esquires? Is that right?
Yes, I think so. Gosh, I can't think of everything he did, but my brain's kind of like farting on this.
No, you get a train of thought though.
But there was basically everyone had there's a little girl like some years back, like during the Obama administration, and she did a class project, a genealogy project, and she traced back every president to King John II.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if everyone's mad because maybe Trump isn't. They've all basically been family, either paternal or maternal.
You know, and I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. I mean, again, only in the sense of continuity, as far as the way that they, because again, we see the system that we see, and we think that we're electing these people. But and again, I do believe in an electoral college just based on population and the way that we're divided up in certain areas. Obviously, there's more populated and less populated. Everyone deserves a fair shot. But as far as the people who are picking those people, it's like people who say, the tax cut. It's like, oh, Trump did this tax cut and it's making the rich richer. And it's like, well, first of all, the Democrats wrote the fucking omnibus bill. First of all,
right.
B, they made the fucking thing so long and didn't give anyone enough time to read it, to even actually read the fucking thing. So that's B. And then C, the spending bill, I lost my train of thought there real quick, but Trump he's not in charge of that. You know what I mean? Like, he just passed it so that way they keep the government running, because if they don't pass a spending bill, then then we're bankrupt again. And then we're going to do it again every time and every time and everything. You have to, because they need more fake money, because they keep extending the debt, the debt back and forth. But I don't want to get too far off the King James topic, because I think that Esquire system leads into the British system of the bar. Our legal system for all the lawyers
is based on the Esquire.
Right, and in the original Constitution, there was, I think it's title or Amendment 13, or it was at the time when the 13th Amendment was passed, that it was the Titles of Nobility Clause. And so again, in this inception of the United States of America being able to govern itself and trying to break away from Britain, all of the royalty, I'm sure they were related to the king and queen, who these esquires and these lawyers were for them, they were respected as nobility. They were more and smarter than the common man. So these people were not allowed into the United States government. It wasn't a part of the Founding Fathers' dream to have all these lawyers, English nobility, infiltrate our government. They were trying to break away. So as soon as there was enough infiltration, that Titles of Nobility clause was repealed, and then now almost, I would say, a majority of all senators and congressmen and all politicians, for that matter, are probably, and for the most part, lawyers and or attorneys. And so this subjugation of what the founding, and I mean, again, and maybe subjugation is a hard term, because I think a lot of this stuff, a lot of conspiracy theorists want to come at this from this total conspiracy outlook on it, when again, if you interviewed a bunch of bankers, they're just going to tell you we're just trying to preserve our family, and we're just trying to keep our name, you know what I mean? Because that's where, the Rothschilds, there's a history of incest in their family.
Right.
For well over 400 years. And I haven't gotten into a lot of the English or British lineage as far as how land and deeds were transferred, but the deed process is one that is very interesting to me, because the deed process is directly related to being able to be a sovereign citizen as far as the United States goes, because you cannot be a sovereign citizen if you cannot own land. But how do you own land if it's not yours? It's part of the incorporated United States. You know what I mean? Like, you would never own land, which is probably why mortgage loans are 30 years long.
Which would mean that no one could vote by the original standard.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that has something to do. I think that has something to do with when they made the 3/5 laws, and they tied it into color slavery at the time. When they were giving black people I think it was a partial right to vote.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of that jargon and that legalese in there created an opportunity to use that voting system in a way that benefits the jurisdiction of a federal state versus a nationalized state. Because even a lot of one of the books I'm reading now is States' Rights in the Union, and for the most part, people say, yeah, the state has more power than the Fed, and it's like, yeah, we can talk about it all day long, but if we're all understanding, as soon as you understand anything, if a legal civil servant ever asks you, do you understand, no matter what they're asking you, if you say yes, you have automatically given them jurisdiction over you. So at that point, you could go kicking and screaming. It don't matter. You've already, you've already given yourself up.
Yeah.
So if you ever get pulled over and an officer says, do you understand why I pulled you over? You're like, no, sir, I don't. I can understand a few things for you, but I don't think I can understand anything. He might not be very happy about that, but, that's a whole, when you get into some of the jargon on how to talk to these guys, but it can be fun, but at the same time, I guess it depends on what you got pulled over for, too.
Yeah, archaic
if you got
language.
Pulled over for,
yeah, archaic language is it's a mess. When I started learning how to write contracts, you know what I mean? Like it's a mess.
Oh, wow.
You have to
Yeah.
stuff like share and share. Like instead of just saying, well, you guys would just share this. You have to say stuff like share and share alike. It makes you sound like a fucking retard. And then fucking, you know what I mean? Like just a bunch of extra like going through the motion stuff that's in there. That's just like it. In a normal conversation, it just wouldn't be there.
Well, and I think that's part of the result of the legal system that we have is that you get a lot of diehard judges and you get a lot of diehard lawyers who love what they do, but they're trained within the system, not like learning about the Uniform Commercial Code or trying to expose a money supply that might be fraudulent isn't part of the legal system as far as we know it. You know what I mean? You learn and there's concepts like tort law or corporate law. How many different laws are there, and who's benefiting from and we all know the attorneys are making the laws. You know what I mean? They're writing the laws. Right. They're bribing all the politicians. PACs, political action committees. Everybody's getting bribed, so that at the end of the day, the bankers are really the only ones benefiting. All this shit is designed for them, and that's kind of the underlying basis of that Jekyll Island meeting is that it's not designed for us. So if we realize that it's not designed for us, but at the same time it doesn't benefit us, then there's almost a demand for a civic duty in some sort of sense, because it's something that either we decide to change or we decide to be spectators and just keep watching LeBron James and Tom Brady, and every 5 years we'll get a new Spider-Man and we'll get a new Transformers and I'll get the new updated.
Keep us distracted just enough to keep being labor slaves.
Yeah, just distracted enough. You'll keep, and it's funny because look at the terms that we live with on a daily basis. You get a minimum wage. You know what I mean? You're living a dream. I mean, we could do this all day long. As far as spectators and players. I mean, and we're all guilty. You know what I mean? I'm 41 years old and I'm just now getting into a lot of this information to synthesize it to even be able to have a conversation with somebody as far as what can we do next. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? What am I doing? How can we network our resources so that, we can start growing our own food? That's a huge one. We got to start growing our own food. I mean, we got to we got to put all these Taco Bells and McDonald's out of business. We have to stop.
Yeah, we do.
We have to stop this corporate model because these corporations now are the next step because the Federal Reserve, well, not necessarily just the Federal Reserve, but if the Federal Reserve and these central banks are the ultimate profiteers, then they need little ground soldiers to make sure that, us, the subservient slaves, are either going to work or buying the product or both. They're even doing both. I mean, if you're an employee for Nike, we'll give you a 25% discount. You're like, oh, sweet. You know what I mean? Like,
sweet, guys.
They're making.
Thank you, masters.
Right.
They don't even give you that. Let me be honest with you. They don't even give you that. I used to work for Nike Corporation in the factories.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it was terrible. You got like a 10% discount.
Jesus.
Yeah, dude, it's terrible. Fucking terrible. Yeah, it was terrible.
Well, and I have a lot of restaurant history, background too, and being a server and bartender and manager stuff. And, for the longest time, it never really bothered me that I was really, serving people crap on a plate.
Right.
And I don't want to, get too far off of, health, but that's, the healthcare system could be one of those prongs as far as, what big business and big banking is in our country because, they're making more money on keeping people sick or just sick enough. You know what I mean? That's another minimum kind of mentality as far as, you know what, we'll keep them just sick enough that they got to keep coming back and they have to participate in the system. And that's one thing that, you know, I wasn't woke enough during the Obama years to be as active as we are now and easy to, you know, analyze, you know, a lot of what Trump's doing. But when Obamacare was passed and the individual mandate was put down, you know, this whole concept of now the government is forcing you to not only get insurance, you're going to be penalized if you're healthy.
Yep.
And you know, for most of those years, it was cheaper for me to take the penalty than to, you know. And again, do we want health care for everyone? Is there enough money to keep everyone, you know, actually not
want
sick?
To keep you alive.
And what people don't talk about is, you know, Trump did pass an executive order on, you know, I think it was he nationalized some month for healthcare awareness. You know what I mean? And teaching kids how to be active and to eat, you know, the right foods and this and that. And, you know, I mean, a lot of that shit is bells and whistles. You know, again, I'm not here touting, you know, Trump's chain, but as far as, you know, this concept of all these countries being for-profit entities and corporations, and this business mentality that people have of Donald Trump, whether, again, you agree with his taxes or not, you know, and I think that we, you know, chatted once about this, is that if you're sitting down at a table with your CPA, and he says, you know, Jimmy, you know, you did okay this year, but we've got this $1 billion circle here that you haven't lost. I have a legal way, according to the tax code that Bill and Hillary Clinton passed. I mean, the Bushes. I mean, sorry. Let me back up. You know, we have this tax code law that legally I could help you write this $1 billion off. There's not an American on the planet that would say, no, I think I'd want to pay taxes on that billion. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of that dream that we're all living in, is to be rich and famous so that you don't have to pay taxes. Because even with the Federal Reserve, the first year that the federal tax was implemented, federal income tax was implemented, was, what do you know, 1913, the first year the Federal Reserve was open.
Right.
Wow. Like, is that a coincidence?
Nope.
Like, fuck, no, that's not a coincidence, man. Like, that's part of the money laundering. And now that there's 3% of the money supply is actually paper, the system of creating that artificial, you know, the artificial inflating of the money supply becomes easier and easier and easier. Because it's all tied to the, you know, Wall Street and artificial intelligence and boom, 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 boom. I mean, it's done within like 11 minutes of the stock market opening, like most of the fucking shit's done.
Think about how much of the money supply doesn't even fucking exist. Like, what gigantic portion of the money supply that you could never exchange for anything because there's just not enough physical money or physical value on the planet to accommodate for it. It's just numbers.
Yeah.
It's literally just numbers in an account.
Yeah. And how many times have, you know, you've heard of, like, you know, oh, I had to reset my computer.
Right.
Oh, you know, this died, I had to give it a reset. You know, my car, I had to dump my car, I had to reset the battery. You know, these these are conscious concepts that we rattle off our tongue, but we don't give it the time of day when it comes to actually making it happen. Like the concept of trying to, you know, tell somebody that no, with the click of a button, dude, you could just wipe it all out.
You could.
It's all fake. It's fraudulent.
The end of Fight Club.
You know what I mean? Like,
the end of the movie Fight Club.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? When the big buildings go down, it's all fucking over. We're all debt free, motherfuckers.
Right. And it's funny, you know, because you could roll out an entire program and call it the debt forgiveness program, and you could, you know, it's funny because this is how you'd sell it. You'd tell you know, oh hey, you're the debt forgiver of the day. Bring all your bills down to the bank, and you're going to be debt free. People were like, what the fuck? But they literally would bring all of their bills, and they would want to sit down with you in front of and log in and literally pay off every bill, and like literally watch it, like you're saying, you know, use the virtual, you know, reality. That's so funny. It's like it literally is a virtual reality now of watching, putting numbers in. Yep, that's my account number. Yep, that's how much I owe you. Oh my God, I got a confirmation. I don't owe you that debt anymore. Wait, all you did was hit that button. You're kidding me, right? Like, it would be gone. But that program would be more efficient than Trump getting on TV, or whoever the president was for that matter, whoever it was, getting on TV and going, you know what? All of you people are now debt-free. Literally, as of this moment right now, every dollar that you earn is yours, and you are now a for-profit entity, and not to mention that you have an account number that we'd be happy to help you buy a parcel of land with, so now that you can be a sovereign citizen, be a landowner. You know what I mean? Like, that would never go over well. You would have people kicking and screaming, calling you socialist, you fascist, socialist, misogynistic, you know what I mean? You're just like, holy shit, the conditioning is working.
The
Like,
craziest thing is it's the people that
go ahead.
would most benefit from getting that debt wiped out that would complain the most.
Right?
You know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And that's where I think this whole concept of a matrix comes in, because fear, and you probably heard the saying, there's you get more out of hope of or fear of loss or hope of gain or something like that. The fear of loss versus the hope of gain, and that's where we're at. People are so afraid to forgive themselves, in everyday life. You know what I mean? People are so stressed out.
Yeah.
That they and driving with Uber and Lyft and again, I'm not a lawyer, I don't give legal advice, but when people get in my car, man, you'd be surprised that, and people do, people who are people come across this in whatever their walk of life is, but people will divulge their, life story to you.
Yeah.
And they'll verbally, and we chat, people, man, sometimes people, especially older elderly women, they're just like, oh my gosh, I can't pay my bills, and I'm behind on this, and I'm stressed out about this, and I'm like, look, again, I'm not giving you legal advice, but debt is a civil area of jurisdiction. It's not criminal.
Right.
At least yet. We're not in the state of law yet where your debt is criminal, or at least it can be for certain individuals. But those are laws that I'm not talking about. As far as your normal credit card bills and shit like that, a lot of it's civil. You worst case scenario, you can go to collection, they sue you in civil court, and worst case scenario, maybe they put a lien on your bank account or they start garnishing your wages. In which case, either way, they're going to take what they need, and then the debt's going to be over, and no big deal, it's done and over. So I tell this lady, hey, take your bills, put them in a freaking box for 3 months, and don't pay them. And she's like, oh my God, I'm going to get these late fees and surcharges. And I'm like, yeah, but so what? Give a shit about that stuff. Save it for 2 months, save up some money, call them back and ask for help. Not only are they going to take your money, they're going to help you reduce the debt, because they want you on a payment program. They want you comfortable with paying. They want your money. So, I mean, if, again, that's not advice I give everyone, or, practice, well, maybe I practice it on a norm, but whatever, that's a whole other situation. But we can't just keep letting the fake money run our lives, you know what I mean? And it's such a hard paradigm to get with, because, there are things in life that are virtually fun, there's shows people watch, sporting events are fun, I do like football, there's a lot of things that in this life that are good and give us those freedoms that James talked about that not everyone gets to experience. But at what point does virtual reality, it's kind of like, using the Matrix when Neo wakes up and he's talking to Morpheus, and he's like, I can't go back, huh? And Morpheus is, he's like, yeah, but would you really want to if you could? And you're like, dude, like, do I want to go back to that? Like, reality that I knew, or a reality that I didn't know existed that now has been forced upon me? And, all different puns and parables and, analogies aside, again, talking about the Second Amendment, if we don't keep those opportunities for us to bear arms and, civilly give our implied consent to a government, then being able to have to be vigilante about bearing arms and fighting for an unimplied consent doesn't and isn't going to end well for anyone. And we've seen that in the Civil War, but even then, the Rothschilds were financing both sides of that war. So, whole other concept, really. Though.
Yeah. I mean, Jefferson even said, Thomas Jefferson said we should beware among basically all things, that we should beware foreign banks and political intrigue coming from Europe. Mm-hmm. That it would try to take our country without ever fighting a war.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even I think it's you can find the quotes from Woodrow Wilson. I don't know the exact time, but even the guy we talked about, he was the president when they passed the Federal Reserve Act. It's a couple of years later, but he's on record saying what a horrible mistake it was, and he can't believe that what had become of something that again, anybody can. I used to sell cars. So, I mean, I can sell you a piece of shit that, I know that it's the only car on the lot you can afford, and I can throw the bells and whistles on something that I know after we ran your credit that I know you can afford. You know what I mean? So there's always going to be a bill of goods that you're either buying my bullshit or I'm buying yours.
Right. Spotting
and when we, you know what I mean?
Yeah, spotting the salesman or the person getting sold.
Yeah, and I think that, that's part of I think we're seeing that mentality in some of the trade war stuff that's going on, because it's, whether, I don't know all the numbers on, what we do with other countries, but, being able to try to function on it's not necessarily a free enterprise anymore. You know what I mean? We're playing this full, again, I'm not trying to say America's right all the time, or, China's right all the time, or, what the individual beefs are, but just the process of tariffs and using the manipulation of money, and that's kind of what the fractional reserve system does. It puts an imbalance on, what that perceived value is of the money. So then we get sold concepts like inflation. Oh no, it's just inflation. The Federal Reserve has to raise interest rates for inflation because the actual cost of the products and goods to get here or to get built is going up. Yeah, that's what we'll tell them. When in reality, it's a devaluation of the actual money because they're printing more. It's like they're diluting it. It'd be like if you had a regular, normal pitcher of red Kool-Aid, and then on the side, you took more water and you kept pouring it into the Kool-Aid, and then you kept selling the cups of Kool-Aid as the same Kool-Aid.
Every time you'd sell
just keep diluting it. And then that's the reality of the situation. But you get programmed to think, no, now I got to pay $10,000 for this car versus 5 years ago. And that's funny that, cars and everyone, even as a salesman, like, oh man, as soon as I drive the car, I'll have to depreciate. It's like that concept of depreciation is really just a term that bankers, it's like risk analysis for bankers. You know what I mean? Because they know that, they've just given you this loan for 7 years or 5 years or 6 years, but they know that it's almost like the redemption of these paper notes. They know that there is a percentage of default on every loan. And so it's a matter of getting as much of it back as they can before that equation starts to hit and people start to either default on their loan or make bank runs and take their paper deposit notes back to a bank and say, hey, I want my gold back. But then people like, Rockefeller's, Morgans, they go, put out some bad information about the Knickerbocker Trust Company. Everyone runs to that Knickerbocker Trust Company to get all their gold out. There's a huge bank run. These banks start to become insolvent. You know what I mean? And that's where, this whole, we're told it's the Great Depression, this moment of time where the entire country was just down on its knees when really the bankers made it up. They started, you know what I mean? Like, so Morgan goes and says that, Rockefeller's bad or whatever the case, whoever's out there selling each other out. And
every last piece of speculation from the fucking stock market, too. Every last, like, no one ever expected that, but no, every person who had speculation in the market all got pulled at the same time, and then it was, basically everything was just a muck. They destroyed everything.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know.
Then they bought it.
Then they bought it.
All of it.
Yeah.
Then they bought all of it.
Yep. So, I mean, we've come a long way as a species, and I definitely like to consider myself, free, but free of what, really? One of my buddies had posted something on Facebook that, the accumulated world debt is, XYZ $1 trillion. And at the bottom of the meme, it's like, it's just a question. It's like, indebted to who? You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, we want to play these GDP numbers and, all this taxation bullshit. Like, who are we paying the debt to?
Right.
And it's like, well, yeah, you pay your debtors. Well, who's responsible for the debt? Like, it all comes from the banks. And again, is there a national need for debt? Yeah, obviously. But if there's no gold in Fort Knox, we really wouldn't need a need for banks because they don't have the gold in the first place. So why would I need to go there to redeem it? If I'm going to get gold, I'm going to go to a third-party gold broker now. I'm going to buy gold directly for them. They're going to ship it to me. And best believe now I'm going to put it in the safe because I can't buy enough because I can't afford it because it's been so inflated. You know what I mean? Like, or deflated in the case of silver. Silver is another, or was a, good precious metal for the longest time. And people obviously still trade a lot in it, but it's not what it used to be. And we can talk about, blockchain or Bitcoin, but That one still, I think that one came out with a gusto as far as, got a lot of good press that it was a decentralized platform, but it's still an online decentralized platform. So it still needs electricity to run. The grid goes down, so here's your fucking Bitcoin. you're fucked.
You're
And
fucked.
not only that, I mean, big whales, you know, to use a really a big fancy Wall Street term, you know, the big whales, those 1%ers can affect that market, whether
Yeah.
you know they want to whether they want to say it or not. If you got $100 million to invest, you can affect a cryptocurrency. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
You know
rate.
what I
Yeah.
mean? You could easily dump it and pump it real fast, and I'm sure they're fucking doing it. But I don't know enough about that too. I mean, I got my $100 in that we've turned into like 185 as of right now. So I mean, we're sitting pretty.
Hey, not bad.
That's
Not
right.
bad.
I made $85 in about a year and a half.
You're winning.
Yeah.
Hey, at least you're winning.
Hey, I'm
Other
winning,
people
man.
aren't.
Well,
Oh,
you know, and
man.
it's funny that you say that because literally I'm winning all the way to the not bank. You know, because I mean,
The not-
I live in a world. I mean, dude. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're all doing, I guess, what we need to do to be happy. Because I mean, for me personally, that's the great thing about being able to disassociate with a government-created strawman identity. Is that my mother and my father loved me enough to give me this particular name, and I do associate with it. But at the end of the day, it's not who I am. And to be able to disassociate with that and live in a reality, you know, where there are material things of value, but they're not based on a hierarchy as far as, you know, you and I are the same, me and James are the same, and everyone on this
Right.
planet is all created from source. And if we can operate in that kind of manner, you know, then the concept of putting limits on capitalism, you know, and everybody freaks out when I say that. You want to put limits on capitalism? And it's like, well, it's not necessarily limits, but if we're going to play the statutory game for now, there's no way that we can redeem all of the people overnight. There's no way that millions and millions of people are just going to become, hopefully, but, you know, it's not a process that's going to just happen overnight. So, I mean, if we can use this statutory, you know, manipulation of some of the system to backtrack on some of the laws, and it's funny because there's like laws from 1945 about the internet that are still governing a lot of our net neutrality bullshit. You know, maybe not net neutrality, that's more of internet service providers, but as far as what we're dealing with, the censorship of our internet, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know, maybe we need to dust off the old legal books and, you know, and take a little bit of time to, you know, amend a few things and, you know, maybe get ourselves in a position to, you know, live globally and, you know, through our species, but versus, you know, an economic constraint system that creates that slavery, regardless of what color you are, what age you are, or how educated you are, for that matter. I mean,
It's slavery.
depending on, obviously, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, but like I said, we're still kind of stuck in a slavery brings on kind of different connotations, especially as a white male. You know what I mean? I kind of hate using the word because it's a connotation that
Oh yeah.
brings
No,
on.
I get it.
You know what I
No,
mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, for me personally, obviously living in Orange County, I mean, everyone, you know, we were raised that way, but it's harder in different areas, and not everyone has, you know, those situations are the same. So there has to be a way to, you know, find that commonality that we've all been scapegoated. You know what I mean? There's not a matter of color anymore. And it's funny because that's how corporations kind of legally, that's how they operate. You know, they're colorless. They're not even people. You know what I mean? A corporation is a legal, is defined almost as like a legal person, an entity that is not bound by a board of governors. You know what I mean? These people, if they run a corporation into the ground, they'll just file bankruptcy. You know, they'll liquidate the whole thing, give everybody a giant bonus, and then refile articles of incorporation in another, you know, legal fictitious name. They're not accountable, or they're not being held accountable. As far as if you and I went in, you know, legally defrauded someone of their entire life savings, you know, we would go to jail if we got caught. And I mean, even with the 2008 bailouts, I mean, or what was the guy I think we mentioned that last time too, the Ponzi scheme kind of scenario where, you know,
Bernie
the guys
Madoff.
are getting they're getting slaps on the wrist. You know, I think one guy went to jail, right? Or I don't even know all that. I might not. Again, I don't think I was as plugged in back in those days, but you know, we're only going to be able to raise the bar as aware as we can become socially. So I mean, again, am I telling everybody to take Sunday football off? No, but I'm saying that on fucking Monday night, well, maybe not Monday night, too bad too, that's football night too, but there has to be an opportunity to, you know what I mean? And and it's funny because, you know, I bullshit, you know, if I would have stayed in Lemon Grove after they had sold the house, or before I figured, you know, found out they were moving, that we had to move, I was going to run for mayor. The lady
Wow.
who is the lady who is the mayor of Lemon Grove, she'd been an incumbent for like 12 years, and the last election that she had run for, she won with 1,986 votes
Right.
in a city of 25,000 people. And I was like, well, fuck, dude, I got enough hot up air in my head. I could go do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Get out there and just hustle. Get out there and
Right.
hustle, man. Get out
But
there and
you know,
hustle.
I mean, you know, everything does happen for a reason. So I think that, you know, obviously the way things are going, I don't necessarily think that, you know, being a politician is, you know, well, it can be effective, but I think that, you know, in the system that we're run, to become that, once you become that, you are bound by where the money comes from, you know, what you're told to vote for. You know, if you vote outside of party lines, God forbid you be bipartisan. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that doing things like this and exposing the opportunity to wield that power as citizens, and, you know, again, without claiming to be a sovereign citizen, because now in this incorporated nation, if you do, you can be chartered as a domestic terrorist. So be very careful with, you know, the way that sovereignty is used. But in the concept amongst the people, according to common and natural law, the concept of being a sovereign citizen is one of the most nationalistic and patriotic things that you can be, because that implies that you are an owner of land, and if you are an owner of land, you basically have a vested interest in the way that business is done and law is applied in your country.
Right.
And, you know, just even the mortgage, you know, the whole mortgage process. I mean, look at, you know, you got renting numbers going through the roof because people are disassociating with even the concept of owning something that, you know, to live in a decent area, at least in California, is, you know, I would imagine the mean house price price in California is well into the millions. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but
It's
you know, we're very bougie out here.
priced some shit. Dude, in California, anywhere decent, like a normal townhome is like $500,000.
Right.
That's why everybody has to rent. You know what I mean? That's why everybody has to rent from one another. No one can actually afford the place.
Yeah, and it's becoming normalized, you know. So, I mean, now you're seeing, I would imagine that commuter miles, like there's a city out here called Temecula, and it's about an hour and a half northeast kind of San Diego.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you build a triangle, the west coast is to the, you know, it's west. So you have this area that's blowing up because it's cheaper to go, you know, build that dream there and drive 85 to 100 miles respectively, you know, 200 miles a day if you're commuting back and forth, to have a piece of land, or to have that concept of, well, no, I want to own versus, you know, it's worse in San Francisco. I mean, and now we're getting into the whole B&B or the Airbnb concept of you know, the people who do own the titles of land being able to, you know, outlet or subsidize individual rooms, and they're making more in a week than they were in a month on normal mortgage payments. So they're kicking people out of their mortgages. You know, when you're more, you know, they're trying to keep people out of their home rentals too. So, I mean, if you're a family in a 4-bedroom home and your lease comes up, so to speak, some of these property owners are kicking out families because they want to Airbnb their house. They're like, I can get $400 a day for all 4 of these rooms. Why would I, you know, give it to your family for $1,400 a month? You know, so you're seeing that problem kind of come up. And and those are byproducts of a greedy economic system. It's, you know, as a homeowner, and you know what I mean. And as a homeowner, I know that there's legal flexibility in there to use the law to have your house be like a bed and breakfast.
Yes.
So there's a certain number of times that you could rent out those rooms legally without it being an Airbnb in the first place. But you see people who use the legality of the law to, you know, manipulate those standards. I'm not saying Airbnb is bad; it's a good concept.
Right.
It's kind of like Uber and Lyft, you know. But when you let people, you know, use the overgreed or the you know, what is scapegoat profiteering. You know, when the mentality of profiteering, you know, again, gets placed on a hierarchy of goods and services, or even respect for people, you know, we're losing the battle there. You know, and obviously that's, you know, maybe too much of a lovey-dovey concept for, you know, a lot of the strict capitalists out there. But, you know, if we can raise that awareness that the money, again, is that circulation of money is virtual, then why can't virtually everyone have it? You know what I mean? Like, if we're just going to keep creating it and keep making it up, then you can have yours too. But let's, you know, we'll just give us some too. Again, it's a push of a button. You know what I mean? Like, in all practical, applicability. But I guess that goes into, even the difference of having, the concept of a fiscal year versus like, businesses don't operate on a January to a December model. They have this whole fiscal year concept, and people are like, what the hell is that? And I don't even really know it well enough to explain it. But
fiscal year is your tax year as a corporation. And
okay.
So the way a fiscal year, so you don't really want your fiscal year to like start and begin like a normal year, like at January 1st. Yeah, that you don't want it to end on, most corporations don't. They want it to actually end around like right before tax season. Like they want to kind of creep it in around tax season, so that they'll be able to have better, because that's what a corporation really cares about. You know what I mean? How
right.
the tax year ends.
Yeah.
So they actually work towards putting the fiscal year end around whatever, like it's usually like, what is it, April 15th or something like that?
Yeah.
So like April 14th would be a good end of a fiscal year for them. And so a fiscal year is, it's a corporate tax year. And you're able to set that whenever you start your corporation. So you could be like, October is my my fiscal year date. You could be like, you could say but the IRS tracks it and keeps track of it. So and that's your fiscal year.
Yeah, even if the IRS blows me away, that's definitely sometime I got to look into. Especially, I think over the last couple of years, they've lost a couple of really big cases as far as taxes go.
Yeah.
I think one of them was like $100 million settlement. I don't want to quote me exactly on that,
right.
but I'll look it up for maybe a next topic. But
right.
Again, even in the Constitution, there is taxes. Yeah, the Congress is allowed to levy taxes and tariffs, and certain instances, whatever that may be. But there wasn't an income tax. There wasn't. Your labor. And that's one concept that, again, I try to raise that awareness on, is our labor. When you go to work, that is the most valuable commodity on the planet.
Yes.
I mean, it's clearly worth more than its weight in gold. And when we get into the evolution of, or at least the next steps in becoming more active and vigilant against corporations, is our ability to unify and stop purchasing their goods and services. And again, not operating as an attorney or giving legal advice, our collective unified stepping up to the plate and not paying income taxes anymore is, to me, I think an area of opportunity to be vigilant, because again, they can't arrest us all. They can try, but as more and more people, get arrested, I guess, or go to court or whatever, I don't even know what the process is, but there has to be a way to, let the federal government, we're not just your tax debt slaves anymore. You know what I mean? And how does that happen? Obviously, that's it kind of sounds fancy, like the land where unicorns live. I get it. I'm not trying to paint pretty pictures without putting forth some steps of effort. But the conscious conversations and the open dialogue, I think, is kind of one of those initial steps, because it's kind of what's lacking as far as what I see in the marketplace. You know what I mean? Even just conduct a social experiment for the day, and every person that you get into we operate like this in the restaurant industry, the 5 and 10 rule. So if you're 10 feet away from someone, you make verbal, or you make kind of eye contact, hey, what's up? You give the head nod, but nothing verbal, and you go about your business. But if you're within 5 feet of someone, you look at them and you're like, hey, and try that throughout the day and see how many people are like, hey, doesn't have to be much, but see what kind of human contact you get. Fuck Twitter and social media and taking pictures of your coffee with hearts painted in, and everybody loves that. That's great and fun and dandy, but the social media is taking away from what we are. We are the social component of social media.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we have to bring that mentality into the workplace and start being more social with each other, because fuck being in the phones. If we were so social, we'd live in a world where parks were bigger than shopping centers, and the social networking was every day. You know what I mean? Like farmers market is a real, farmers market. That's a cool concept. Everyone gets together in the community. They they trade or barter or sell different goods and services, and more than likely you're going to run into somebody that you know. You know what I mean? And that's the component of I think, even living within the planet. You know what I mean? Because on a crazy note, I do believe the planet is alive. I wrote a paper on it in college called the Gaia hypothesis, that in and of itself, the planet Earth Gaia is her own self-sustaining regulatory, biosphere. And she's going to do, whatever she needs to do to make sure that whatever she wants, like our existence is not dependent, our existence is dependent on her existence is not dependent upon us. So, I mean, people want to do the whole global warming argument. It's like, well, there may be some shit going on, but it's not, our existence isn't affecting it. We may be affecting our own existence, and we may be fucking up some shit for our biospheres here and there, but believe me, the Earth could fart tomorrow and gets to start all over fresh. She's been here doing it a lot longer than us. But we don't have that respect for our biosphere anymore. Economics and the economy, or money, getting money. It's the basis and the fundamental.
Getting this thing that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, do a thing that doesn't even exist, and we are literally giving every decision-making moment of our existence to it at the moment.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because no matter what, I got to go to work. I got to eat. I got whatever the case may be. It's all based on getting the money and the transaction of it now becoming mechanical. It's not even anymore where you go give people cash. You're sliding the card, you're flipping a chip, you're clicking a button. You know what I mean? That transition, and I guess that's where we're getting into transhumanism now, and this whole movement of even transgenderism. We're creating an opportunity for this. For it being okay to be a boy or a girl, those decisions are becoming economic in and of themselves, but then you're placed in this whole, machine database. And, we're things like Facebook, where you're having just this giant, data breaches and millions of people being exploited, and there being no real retribution. And again, the retribution is, here's a couple $1 billion fine. Okay, great, sweet. And now you've got Facebook back in the godly graces of everyone. Like, they said they were sorry. Did you see Zuckerberg? He went up there and said he was sorry. And it's like, well, did they send you a check? Because that they're making money off of your information. It's not that they're out there trying to spy on you, that you're in this big NSA sting operation. They're making fucking money off of it. It's your information, and they're not giving you a cut. They're not giving you a dividend. They're not giving you a stipend.
We are each worth $34 a year.
He's what?
We're each worth $34 a year.
Right? See?
Yeah.
I mean, and
yeah.
You times that, a couple, now they got what, a couple billion people on their platform.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it's insane.
I'm pretty sure the ROI on the investment is pretty well. That he could, even if you just called it an investor stipend, he could still give every Facebook user $1 million, and still call it a tax return. You know what I mean? Like, or I don't know. I guess actually I don't know if that practice is legal or not. If giving stipends is tax deductible, but it sounds good. So we'll use it.
It sounds good. It sounds great. It sounds great. I like it.
Right. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoy the research, and it's something that I think that, for lack of a better term, can be used for our benefit. So I mean, it's good stuff. So.
Yeah.
Now we got to do some implementation.
Absolutely.
Definitely, man.
Well, we've been on here like an hour and a half. I think we're about an hour and a half.
Oh yeah, well, it's a good time to fly. That could be that may be a possible limit. I mean, I know that as you guys get to see the user statistics, right? And they're like user how long people watch and stuff. So I mean, as long as get some feedback, I mean.
Absolutely.
Love to keep chatting, but I mean, I'm super stoked that you guys are doing stuff like this, and
sure.
I don't know if Richie, have you been in the service or just James?
No, I was not in the service. I was in the other opposite end of the.
The other end. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah.
I did go to prison.
Right.
I did go to prison. I was institutionalized, just not the way you were institutionalized.
Right. Well, either way, then in that case, thank you both for your service. That's something that, again, in the everyday civilian life, people they're not giving enough credit, to the people who have, really sacrificed. And now we've got, protests over, regardless of whether you think it's over the American flag or whether you think that, this and that. People do have a right to protest, but, again, we're so compartmentalized to not be able to think freely that now you can't even really protest freely. So, I mean, hopefully more and more people will, voice those opinions.
Sure.
So,
shit anymore.
my cousin was in the service, and they live in North Carolina. So, Maybe one of these days I'll get you guys connected. You can throw some stories around.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well,
Hell yeah.
I guess we'll close it out there then. It was a good talk, man. We'd like to have you on again on some other topics, dude.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Dude,
for sure.
Stay in touch.
I look forward to it.
Anything related, yeah, I mean, Scottish Rite, Freemasonry would be a good one. There's a lot of great information there, but
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, studying philosophy, I got a lot of useless information just rolling around like marbles up there. So, I mean, kind of getting the articulation put together, so.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the sunshine. Have a good day.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, man. Thanks for calling, dude. It'll be up in a day or two.
Yeah.
Sweet.